If you knew you were enough, what would your life look like? What would love look like? This is the Enough Factor broadcast, where we're redefining what makes you enough in life and in love. Now here's your host, Suzette Birnard. Hello everybody, it's your life coach and relationship solutionist, Suzette Birnard, and welcome to the Enough Factor podcast. As always, I am so happy that you've tuned in. Got to shout out to my faithful listeners. I love you all. You know I do. And if you're new, my mission with this podcast is to help you to redefine what makes you enough on your own terms. Now, how do I do it? Well, I do it by amplifying what I call 3 critical factors of enoughness, and that's your voice, your value, and your vision. And to help me today is a very special guest, someone that I have been cyber stalking for a while because I just love her. I love her. She had me at hello, and her name is Teshubiyah Elias of the Growth Project. Now, I've had the good fortune of connecting with her on Instagram, and immediately I noticed how thoughtful and deep her posts were, and I love deep, right? And so I thought to myself, this is what I actually thought, y'all. How is it that this young woman is so insightful about life? So, of course, I watched and I observed and I listened and I read, and I found out the reason why. And I am so glad to have her joining us today. Just a little bit about her. She is the founder of the Growth Project, and the mission is to assist women through the healing process by encouraging them to confront their pain, realize that they are not alone, and through communication with others, feel hope. And she's going to introduce herself in a way that only she can. But I just wanted to give you just a little bit about her, and I want you to join me in welcoming Teshubiyah Elias. Welcome, Teshubiyah.
My goodness, I'm so excited and so nervous at the same time. I just adore you so much. So I am Teshubiyah, as you stated, the founder of the Growth Project. And a little bit about me, I'm actually 40. Most people think I'm younger than I am, but I'm 40 with 4 children. And what birthed the Growth Project was, I was in a group. I was in, it was a Let It Go group of just dealing with yourself. And in that group, I started doing a lot of reading. So a lot of what I'm posting is usually what I'm reading. Sometimes it was things I thought and I was like, oh, but then I see it in the book. I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy. I knew this was real. So I would post these things and I would share my journey of trying to heal myself online. And so many women would jump in my DM and ask, well, how did you do this? Or what about that? And, you know, if it's divorce, because I'm divorced, or traumas from your parents, how do you deal with them? And I would just share, but I will say that the core of that is really just feeling safe, in a safe space to be able to say, hey, I'm not okay, or this happened to me. Because once you can acknowledge that, you can begin to release it. We're holding these things close to us because we don't feel we have a safe place to release them. So, but that's a bit about me.
Oh, and you're providing that safe place. I cannot just do a drive-by online with your page. I always have to stop because something grabs me. But before we get more into that, I always like to start my podcast with what I call a truth and dare question.
Oh, now, it's and dare.
Yes. The good news is it's not your truth or dare. But the bad news is you don't get to choose because it's truth and dare.
I see. Okay.
So don't be scared. It's a great, great question. And the one that I really wanted to ask you was, what is a truth that your relationship urged you or caused you to see and dared you to take radical action on?
Oh, so the truth would be, which is really difficult. The truth was I didn't know me. That's the truth. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know I didn't know my values. I didn't know what I stood for. So it forced me to reevaluate my whole life and everything that I thought made me. And it began to change. At first it was hard. It was like, okay, well, this is what people are used to, and this is what I'm good at. So continue. But I wasn't happy. Even though I was good at doing it, it was leaving me depleted. It was leaving me feeling mistreated or abused or taken advantage of. And then I had to read my books. It's like, but you're allowing it. So what are you going to do about it?
You're allowing it.
Yeah.
And that is true. That is true. We allowed it. So what helped you from getting from the place of, yeah, I allowed it, to taking more ownership so that you could be empowered?
So it's funny you asked that, because I was holding on to this thought, because there was two things. Some things we did allow for a long time. Some things we did not. And I think we blurred the lines, or we've been through, for me, I have been through so many traumatic things my whole life, from a toddler all the way into my teenage years. It was repeated back to back to back trauma. And so allowing things was normal. Saying no or having boundaries was not something that I understood or thought I even had the right to say. Because of the things that had happened, I believe I paralyzed certain parts of, well, my voice was already gone. So my power to think that I was worth saying, no, this hurts me, or no, I don't want to be in this, that was nowhere to be found. I hate to say this, but this is the reality. And I'm still thankful nonetheless. Having my children, my son, when I got pregnant with my son, was the first decision I made on my own, because I said I will not raise my child in the house that I was raised in due to the things that happened. And then, because I was running the streets, I was like, he can't be in this environment. So my son was the reason that made me say, I can't allow myself to live like this anymore. So that was the beginning for me. That wasn't the beginning of change for me per se, because I still was in survival mode. And just because I got married, I was still having children, and I was just trying to protect them. In some ways, I was too protective. Like, they couldn't do sleepovers, they couldn't stay at friends, because I was moving from trauma, functioning. I didn't know how to love them. Like, there's so much. I'm gonna try not to go all over the place, but I had to learn how to be affectionate with my children. But as they were getting older, one thing I had always taught them was, you can come to me if something happens. I don't want you to feel like you can't, because I was taught what happened at home stayed at home. Unfortunately, the young man that did something to me, so I believe he did something to my brother. And then I found out maybe a couple of years ago that he may have did something to my mother. And I never understood, well, why do we keep this person around? But I know that goes way deeper than my understanding of why family allows certain patterns. But I was determined with my children that was a pattern that was not going to happen, because I knew how. I did a video the other day, how I was depressed my whole life. I was just depressed. Happiness, I didn't know what that was. I did not smile. I could not breathe. I was always expecting bad to happen. Mm-hmm. So having children, I was like, no, that's not what it's going to be. But as they got older and would say to me, well, why can't I? Or why are you yelling at me? I didn't do this. And then I had to sit back and look at myself. Because though I wasn't repeating the pattern that happened to me, I had made another unhealthy way of living and had them in that environment. And I did not want to do that. So that was what started the work. Even though I've been off and on doing it for over 10 years, it got really heavy within like the last 3 years, because 3 of my kids are in college. And, though they're not dating and don't have kids yet, I want to make sure that they leave out my home with a healthy mind and a healthy heart before they start engaging in relationships and start their own family.
Yeah, I think that is so important. I saw a post where you were quoting, it was a book, it was a recent post, and you said, beneath the surface of the protected parts of trauma survivors, there exists an undamaged essence, a self that is confident, curious, and calm, a self that has been sheltered from destruction by the various protectors that have emerged in their efforts to ensure survival. Once those protectors trust that it is safe to separate, the self will spontaneously emerge, and the parts can be enlisted in the healing process. And that was so powerful. You said that your body keeps score.
Yes.
And I truly believe that your body keeps score. And I also wrote beside it, because I wrote it down, I also believe that your relationships are an extension of that.
Yes.
And hold up a mirror. They let you know just how healed you are.
Mm-hmm. I again, when I got that book, actually my sister sent me that book, but what that book said was what I always thought, because I may not have the degrees, but I have the experience, the live. So I'm feeling this way, I'm thinking this way. And I'm honest. I tell people they think I'm very friendly. I'm very introvert. I'm very cautious with my environment. I'd rather stay home, but I know that is from the traumas because this is a lifelong journey. But once I feel comfortable and safe, which is why I had to work on me with my children, because I didn't want them to not feel safe with me as their mother. I did not want them to feel like if something was happening at school or at work, because the hood side of me would be like, go up there and blow it up. So I had to learn to, there's a time and a place for everything. Make sure that I'm giving them what I needed when I was younger. Because though I didn't speak up, it was because it was, well, you deserved it, or you shouldn't have been in their face, or, you know what I mean? These are the things that we need to think about before we spill them on to children, because it's really coming from an unhealed place. So I'm going to jump forward really quick. My mom was recently released. I don't remember the date, but I think maybe 3 months before her release date, we were having a conversation, and she shared with me how one of her brother's father had molested her. And because I kept trying to ask her, why were you out in the streets so early on drugs? Why you been on drugs since you were in your teenage years? Why? Because obviously something pushed her there. And so when she shared that with me, I kept trying to understand, well, why didn't she say something to my grandmother? Right? Because obviously we got a different relationship she had with her mom than I did with my grandma. But then when I look back at, because my grandmother raised me, there was no deep conversations. There was no, when your cycle come, when you have sex, there was not, my grandmother was not equipped to do that. So I'm assuming with whatever happened with my mom, she just ran to the streets. But then the cycle continued because then my mom did not protect me. She put me in harm's way more times than she should have because of her own trauma. However, we're in a different generation now. And I love to see the push of mental health now, the understanding of it, the vulnerability, because these also were things I had to learn. Crying was not a thing. You couldn't be soft, but I've learned, and I'm still learning. So I pray whomever hear this don't be hard on yourself. I always push self-compassion, because we overthink what we're doing, how we're doing it, and compare it to other people. And we miss the presence of, we're doing it. You understand? We're doing it. Every day that you get up and you continue to strive, you were doing it. So I just wanted to share that.
Oh, I'm glad you did. And I had already been following you, but what let me know that I wanted you on my podcast, and now was the time, was when you were very vulnerable after having seen your mom. You were talking, and I heard it, and my heart just felt something, because even though there was the determination to continue to choose wellness, to continue to be kind to yourself and to love yourself and to put your mental health and your emotional health at the forefront, I could tell that was a difficult experience for you. And we talked a little bit about it before I hit the record button, because I felt like sometimes when people see us as coaches or whatever, they think that we are somehow exempt. Like somehow never we've cleared the runway, like the plane, there's turbulence when you're clearing the runway. And then when you clear that runway, that plane takes off and it's just smooth sailing. But they don't understand that it is a decision every single day to choose healthy, to choose yourself against that familiar pull or that natural familial pull. And I could sense that with you, though you were very poised, you were full of grace in it. Because I've gone through trauma myself, I knew what it took. It's one thing to get yourself ready for something, but then when you come face to face with it, girl.
So before her release, I got another coach, because I've had a few coaches, and I have my therapist, but I got another coach. He was doing a 21-day clarity cleanse. Now I'm thinking clarity of mind, to whatever, but it changed my diet, right? Which started to show me how certain things I was eating was affecting how I was thinking, and how my emotions was affecting how I was eating. So I was like, okay, this is cool. But he had pushed the date back. And this is when I realized I needed more help than I thought I did to prepare for my mom's release. Because he pushed the date back. I think it was around Father's Day weekend. So he was like, I want to start the week after because it's Father's Day weekend to accommodate the guys. I spiraled out of control. I cried. I panicked. I had an anxiety attack. And I was like, I need this. I need this. My mom is coming home. I need this. I need to be prepared. What am I going to do? And so he spoke with me a few times before the thing. And he was like, you have everything that you need. You've been doing this. You are. And I'm hearing him. But what I didn't realize until that moment was Teshubiyah wasn't standing there anymore. Tasha, 8-year-old Tasha, was full blown in effect because I love my mother. I would love a great relationship with my mother. I would love to know who she is and who she can become. Unfortunately, Teshubiyah and Tasha battled with that because my mom needs help that I can't provide. Now, my 8-year-old and my 13-year-old version of myself, whatever my mom asked, I did it, even if it was to sacrifice myself. So I had to prepare myself. And the coach asked me, he said, if your mom never changes, if she never changes, what are you going to do? And I couldn't get the words out. And I said, well, I don't have a choice because, again, not thinking even about me, I said, I will never put my children in harm's way. And he says, so your children are grown. Your kids are pretty much out the house. If your mother never changes, what are you going to do? Because your mom is looking for that younger version of you. And so I'm sitting here, I'm crying because we're on a video thing. I'm mad. I don't want to talk to him anymore. I'm like, you're not helping. But the truth of the matter is I needed to come to the reality that if she does not change, I must choose me. And it was every step along the way, I had to do that. And it was hard. I cried. I went into isolation. But every time I continued to go in her presence, I would feel exhausted. I would feel disrespected. And I had to say, that's my mama. I can love her and want best for her, but I don't have to deal with this. And then after maybe a week or two, it was, oh, I'm not dealing with this. And then even yesterday, I had to tell her, hey, I'm working right now. You can't keep calling me 24/7 to do something for you because I'm not the only person in the world. But then the compassion comes in because remember, I told you I wasn't the best mom. I may not have took them through what I've been through, but I wasn't the best mom. And I needed them to forgive me. I needed them to have mercy on me and understand it and let me build with them. So I give her that, so that if she ever chooses, we can build from there. But I keep my boundaries in place. And I think it's not normal, or it wasn't normal to me for you to cut your mom off or put her at a distance, or your dad or your children, whomever it is in your family. I'm always told, well, that's your family, but I'm my family too.
Wow. Hold on, I got to sit with that. But I'm my family too. So many times we throw ourselves under the bus. One of my family members called me. When they called, and I said, this feels a little awkward, because I kept saying, so what's going on? Which is code for, why are you calling?
Oh my goodness.
Right?
I'm happy you said that. So I was like, I'll be like, what's going on, lady? As in, why are you calling me? Wow.
Exactly, because in our case, we had not talked in a while. And the last time we talked, it was one of those butt calls where your finger or something hits the thing and calls and you didn't really mean to. And so you kind of had that awkward conversation, but that wasn't the conversation, which was the one that goes back to the reason why there's an awkwardness in the first place. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't sure whether hers was a butt call or not. So I was like, what's going on? And it kind of went on with, well, just was thinking about you, that kind of thing. And I was like, dun, 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 that I was just thinking about you. Because we've been on this cycle for a while, that's usually what greases the wheels of the cycle starting again. I was just thinking about you, you were on my mind, that kind of thing. And so what I had to do was stop it. And I said to her, listen, the ultimate thing was, I will always love you. Mm-hmm. We share the same DNA. Mm-hmm. But at 61 years old, I'm not willing to go through this thing that we do every single time.
Yeah.
And I said we, but of course, from my standpoint, it's you. But from her standpoint, it's me. So I said, let me go on and do the we thing. Not because that's how I feel, but I have to give respect to, you have a different experience than I do. So I said that we go through where we will miss one another or feel that family love Jones, that desire to be connected, that thing. And you think about that person and you have that conversation and you kind of, and I told her, I said, listen, for me, that leads to the dark side, because if you were to take away the triggers, we like each other. And if we continue with this, we'll laugh, we'll reminisce, I'll say something funny, you'll say something funny, and it'll feel like it was a great conversation, and we'll do it again, and we'll do it again. And then ultimately, one of us is going to say something, do something that the other does not like. And then it's going to feel awkward. And the other person is going to wonder what happened. What did I do? Why is she acting funny? This energy is off. Yeah. And then the other person not telling you. And you go through this thing and you're going over and over in your mind. What did I do? What happened? What could this be? And the only thing that you have to reach back to is your past. Okay, well then here we go again. Because that's all you got. Mm-hmm. You've not created anything new that you can reach for. And so, and then it becomes, you go through that same thing. Then that person is holding it in and you're holding it in, but you're trying to act like it's okay. Like I'm mature, I am so over this. You try to go through all these changes, and then ultimately the coup de grace happens, and there's an explosion.
Yes.
And it all comes out, and it's weeks and weeks or months and months, and the person didn't even know that way back then. So 3-4 months ago, I did what? And you've been nursing this out? It just happens. And like I said, listen, it's not just that at this age, I am not willing to go through that anymore. I feel like we deserve to have basically the dignity of our own process. And I didn't say it in those words, but that's what I ultimately said, that life has to grow us and evolve us the way that it's going to. And I don't want to be a disruption to where you're growing to that you really like. And I'm growing to and I really like. And we don't have to second guess, censor, walk on eggshells. I don't want to disrupt that. And sadly, we become disruptors to our own authentic growth. And I don't want to be that for you anymore. And I don't want you to do that for me. So even though we're not going to be like the Cleavers or be like the perfect dysfunctional family that gets along well on TV, that we can't be that, just know that I love you. And I want the best for you. And basically, I realize I'm not the best for you. And you're not the best for me. Now, if something happens, sure, I'm going to be pissed off if I don't know something going on with you that I need to know. But this calling and checking in, barring that, let's not take ourselves through this, because at our age, we've been doing this all our lives. And it's just time for us to admit that unless the divine organically brings about enough healing in us where we can foster something real and authentic and useful, that it's no longer our job to try to make it happen. We're tearing that page out of the family manual.
A lot of families need to. You said so much. And again, you know how you didn't know you need something until you got it? Because I've been processing. I think when I did one of the videos, I was like, I'm still processing my feelings. I literally was there picking my mom up when I did the video, because going there, I was stressed out. Calling her is just, when I listened to the story you just said, I think we get into the habit and the routine of certain things, and we lump it in, but your family, so this is what family does. And I've taught my children, you can have friends that become family that will treat you better than the family that you were born into, and that's fine. And you said something else that triggered me, but I'm thankful because I'm doing good now. My younger brother, I'm 10 years older than him. We stopped communicating right before my mom was getting out. And it's the same cycle. He feels abandoned. I was 10 years old taking care of him. When I got married, I left the state. Him and a couple of family members felt like I abandoned them. I neglected them. When my grandmother passed, I was supposed to pick up the burden. I did to the best of my ability. But what people don't realize is I had my own stuff going on. I had been homeless. I had a miscarriage. I had things going on. But because you don't put everything on Front Street, they think you're just happy in life as well. And I don't feel like I have to explain anything to anyone. If I shared it with you, I did. If I didn't, that's my right. So I had stopped speaking with him because he felt as if I was obligated to take care of him and his children that he has. He has 4 children. And again, as the big sister, I was doing the best that I could. But then I got tired. I got emotionally, physically, financially exhausted. And then the disrespect came, right? So I'm sitting up here like, But then that goes back to the beginning of this conversation, but you are allowing it. This is the pattern that he has. He has not changed. So it goes back to, again, what you said. I had to say to myself, yes, this is my brother, but I love me. I have to love me more than I love anybody else. Because when you start to put people before you, you neglect the basics that you need for yourself. So we did not speak until my mom was released. He started contacting me. And I had to stand my ground. And I said, no, I'm not coming to pick you up. Well, I'm leaving out the part that he's on drugs. A lot of my family members have been on drugs. And if you know anything about the people that are on drugs, when they are addicted, they do things. So I had to leave it. And it's hard. It's hard. Mm-hmm. However, I have to choose me, because that cycle is so, it's like you said, it's back to a dark road. And I feel like if I'm going to go down any dark road willingly, it's going to be my past so that I can go through and clean up house. It's not going to be somebody else's dark past. It's not going to be somebody else's. I realized the other day, I was talking to someone and it was like several people had passed. So I was heavy, but I couldn't deal with my passing that I was close to because I was dealing with 6 other people passing. And I said on the phone to a friend, I said, I realized the burden of life isn't just your burden. The burden that really takes you out is the burden that you carry of everybody else's.
That's the burden.
I didn't realize that until last week. So I took a step back and I'm still in the process of dealing with that and learning, okay, these healthy boundaries got to be, they're non-negotiable.
And I think that's the growth, because you're in your 40s, I'm in my 60s. And with that conversation that I had with my family members was when I finally realized that I was giving myself 100% permission to say no.
Yeah.
100%. No guilt, no anger. I have really faced the reality. It's almost like you're banging your head against the wall and blaming the wall, you know? Mm-hmm. And the beautiful thing about it, which doesn't always happen, and I have to give her credit, is in my being very honest with her. She reflected back what she heard me say. And then she made this fantastic analogy. She said, it's like having sand in your shoe. She said, in the beginning, it doesn't bother you. She said, but the longer it stays in your shoe, it starts to irritate your skin and it starts to hurting. And that sadly is the cycle with us. In the beginning, it doesn't feel bad. It's like, oh yeah, a little sand in my shoe and you're walking and it's just fine. But then after a while, without anybody being premeditated or malicious in it, it just goes bad. And I told her, I said, the thing about it is we grew up in the same household, but we got injured in different places. And what was toxic for me may not have necessarily been toxic for you. Mm-hmm. And what was toxic for you may have not necessarily been toxic for me. But when you put it together, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. it makes it bad for us both.
Yeah.
And it's not our fault. We didn't come here that way. Mm-hmm. But it just so happened the way it landed with us has a lot to do with our predilection. You know, how we came here. I came here independent, you know, speaking my mind. My mom told me I didn't want anybody to hold me. She said, after feeding you and changing you, if anybody tried to hold you, rock you, sing to you, whatever, you screamed your head off. And she said, and then as soon as they put you down, you were fine. It's like, let you play with your fingers and toes. You were fine. You were enamored with yourself and you didn't need all that extra stuff. And so even to this day, if I feel like somebody is imposing their will on me, girl, I feel that thing that I'm learning to control but it's like, do not try to impose your anything on me. And so I realized that a personality like that gets wounded in a different way than a personality that might be more open and friendly and trusting and all that. And so it was great that I felt like two grown-ups were having a conversation. And we were both able to say, I will always love you.
I love it.
But be at peace. Now, if something happens, I want to know.
Yeah.
But other than that, be at peace. And my only hope is that when we see each other in real time again, that there will be that peace and neither one of us imposes an expectation on the other that will lead back down to that dark path. Mm-hmm. And just accepting it. And that's what made your story, that sometimes even the more spiritually astute you become, even the more spiritually connected or the deeper your faith does not automatically mean that you're going to reconcile.
Bring that out.
You know?
That's I'm not saying it's not possible, but I'm saying the reality is we're human beings that process things differently. I still do desire a relationship with my mom, but a relationship that is respected on all levels. But I had to check myself because I tell her, my kid said, you're being mean. I said, I'm not being mean. I'm not understanding why is she calling me like we're not friends. You know, sadly, my mom did not start trying to deal with me until my grandmother passed. And I knew it was you went from one help to the next, you know, and so the truth of the matter is that being the root of in me, knowing that you only deal with me because it's a benefit, that's hard for me. That's really hard for me because it triggers so many other things that have happened. But I said, okay, until she gets in a position where she's safe, because after 23, she told me it was longer than that, but 23 years in prison, from what I recall, I can imagine coming back out. And that's again where the compassion is, coming back out, not knowing how to use the ATM, not knowing how to use the phone, because these are the things she called about. And I just be looking at the phone like, yes, right? But then I said to myself, she's a grown woman. And if she want to learn how to do these things, this is what we're going to do. I'm available on Mondays and Fridays or Tuesdays and Thursdays, whatever I can allot to her to help her. But it will not, because now she'll say, well, when time permits, you know, because then I had to tell her, I said, you want to ask and not tell me what to do? But this came with when I was listening to you, is effective communication we have to do with ourselves and with our friends and with our families. We have to let people know, like you said, it could be 3 months that we are nursing an issue, because the issue that this is from when I was a child that I've always felt. I'm back up. When I was in my coaching thing before my mom came out, the coach brought to my attention what was the hardest thing for me to receive love and trust. I said in conversation and did not realize, he was like, you're playing that in the back of your head 24/7. If my mother and my father could not love me, how could anybody love me? So my mom was on drugs. My dad was on drugs. They weren't there. So I never got what most people feel we should always have, which is love, safety, and security growing up. So to now come back in my life and you still can't express those things to me makes me question, but made me question. Let me rephrase that. Made me question. And as I do my work and I release the expectation of her to be this great mother to me, and I understand that she got some healing to do that she may not want to do, because this is not an easy road and it's not mandatory for me to make someone else do, you know, because they come into it on their own. So I look at the reality of the things that she's been through. I look at the reality of the things that she's done. And I said to myself, she loved me the best way she could. I'm not happy with that answer. And that's the answer that I accept. Mm-hmm. And now I am learning a new normal with her. And I think, listen to what you and your family member, If we can learn a new normal, cool. Even if that new normal is, I talk to you every 6 months and check. I'm okay with that. I'm not the type where I like people to call me every day. So respect where people are, how they are, and love them in that entirety.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't do that. We want people to be how we want them to be and let us, impose ourselves on them. So I'm learning that with my mom. Like, Mom, that's not cool. That's not what I do. And let's see where we can meet each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate so much your sharing that, because like I was saying, there's so many people out there for carrying guilt and shame because they feel like they should be different because their toxic family member feels like they're okay. And they're the ones that's going like, this doesn't feel right. But I thought about also when you were talking, when I was doing substance abuse counseling years ago, part of my job was to assess them.
Mm.
And one of the things that became very, very clear, and also there's evidence and research to support it, is that people's emotional, mental, spiritual growth stops at the point that they become addicts or alcoholics.
Listen.
And so even though they might not be drinking anymore or abusing drugs anymore, from a mental, emotional, spiritual, social standpoint, they are still developmentally where they were before they started using. And so let's say you started using at 15. You might be 50 now, but you still have 15-year-old blind spots. You still have certain immature expectations. Your expectations haven't grown up yet because they were halted at that point. And so it can be very difficult to have a relationship where, unless that person they really immerse themselves in therapy, in counseling, in those things to help grow them up, it's very difficult for you who've been growing all the time, you who have been doing the work, going to therapy, reading the books, getting help all this time. And that person has been in a situation that perhaps maybe they're not 15 years old anymore, but maybe they're 20. And you are all the way 40.
Like, right.
Right? And it doesn't matter that biologically they're 10, 20 years older than you. From a developmental standpoint, there's still some things they have not mastered. And it's not an indictment. It's just a simple fact that as we grow, and neuroscience helped me a lot too with overcoming certain thoughts, is that your mind is mapping to what you put in front of it and processing it in the way that you challenge it to. If that mind isn't being remapped to something that is healthy, that is enlightened, it still stays the same.
This is too funny. This is too funny. Listen, because sometimes it really goes back to you start to question yourself.
Yeah.
And I did a few times, like, man, am I tripping? Because I said to my mother, I said, Mom, are you taking any psych meds or anything? Like, because some of her conversations, I'd be like, what are you laughing at? Or why would you say that? Because I'm like, you're 60 something and you're sounding like you're younger than me. Like, and then my brother the same way, but because I never did hard drugs, I used to have drinks here and there. I never smoked or did anything hard because of what I seen in the neighborhood. And I kept saying to myself, I said, it's the drugs. And because that's a constant thing in their life for years, and they haven't chose to shift the mindset to give them life, something different for their mind or their body, is they're stuck. And the reason I understand it is because I believe trauma does the same thing.
Yeah.
The traumas that I had been through left me stuck until I started to do the work and be able to pull myself and see something different than what I thought. So for you to say all that, it's just kind of like comforting, which also makes me be a little bit more gracious in dealing, because some of it she can't help. Is just the reality of where she is now. Yeah.
Yeah. And really, life is a very interesting thing. A lot of people are like, I want to find my purpose. I want to find my purpose. I want to find my purpose. And I think in this success-driven society that we have romanticized purpose.
Mm-hmm.
People think purpose is, I'm going to be a millionaire. Purpose is, I'm going to have a big ministry. Purpose is, I'm going to be a power couple. It's like they've taken their dreams and they somehow or another intermingled it with purpose. But purpose doesn't feel good. And I think if people knew it, they wouldn't be trying so hard to find it. But it doesn't feel good. But I sense purpose all in everything that you are dealing with now. That it's growing you for your own fulfillment, but also so that you can really know all the nooks and crannies when you're coaching other people who've dealt with trauma. That you know all the little secret hiding places mentally, emotionally. You know all those things, and you have an experience of what has to happen in order for them to get unstuck, in order for them to choose healthy, in order for them to, which I guess the next step would be, create the life they want, where they're welcome in, create a life that they are welcomed in.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only thing that helps you to deal with the loneliness that not having a close relationship with family can leave you with, that kind of hole, is that you create, like you said, friendships and connections that nourish you and nurture you and feel like family. And you're welcome in it. And they look for you to be who you truly are. That, I think, is the healing. Have you found it to be true too?
When I started to be myself and people welcomed me and people enjoyed it, but again, the coach had to bring out, you think people don't love you, you think people don't like you because of that thing in the back of your head. Because I was like, they don't love me. Like, they don't, they just want, in my head, everybody just wanted to use me, wanted something from me. No one's seen me. When I started digging deep and realized, well, then it was twofold. Before I realized that they could see me, when I got to the point where it didn't matter if they seen me, as long as I showed up as me, I was happy. So that was my first point. But then after I accepted that and I started seeing people see me and people was pouring back into me and saying things, I was like, oh, this is what living is like? Oh, this feels good. I like it. In moderation, because I also got overwhelmed because I wasn't used to it. But that's why I tell people, continue. It doesn't stop because the relationship that you wanted with someone did not be what you wanted to be, and be willing and open to allow a new relationship to emerge with you all, because our expectations, standards are one thing, but the expectations that aren't communicated cause a lot of suffering.
They do. They do.
So it's been a lovely journey. I will say, when you mentioned purpose, I remember thinking, what am I here for? Because I have no idea what I'm passionate about. Everything, I love healthcare. I love the elderly. I love children. So, I don't get it. And then, because I fought bringing forth the growth project. I didn't want to do it. This was me. This was my personal life that I'm working on me. I'm not trying to help nobody. I'm not trying to do this and that. Like, if I drop something and you pick it up, great. But I kept fighting it. And when it was, my first group that I did was for free, and it was 28 women, different races, different religions, different states. And when they started giving me the reviews, I stepped back and I was like, okay, I got to get serious. I need to read more. I created a course. I created like everything that I was doing for me. I did a questionnaire. I needed to know, how do you cope with this? Because if you got an unhealthy coping mechanism, we need to come back with it. Like, I became so into it because it's impacting you. It's changing your life. And at the end of the day, that is why I share my story. Because we're not out here by ourselves. And you don't have to, because what I noticed, a lot of people don't want to share it on social media. You don't have to. That's your business. What you're doing behind the scenes to work on you is your business. You ain't got to put it on your social media. You ain't got to buy a shirt that's talking about healing. You just got to do the work, because your fruit will bear. Your life, when you heal, everything around you heals, because your vision is different.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I remember I posted it. I said, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't even want to do it. But baby, when I accepted it, I still have my moments, but when I accepted it, it's nothing but the Most High. That's all I can say. Because I guess he gave me my heart's desire without me knowing. Because as a little girl, I always wanted to make sure that I could help people. I want people to get the love, the support that I wish I had gotten. And unknowingly, I realized he positioned me to be that help. And it's just been beautiful.
It is. It's a beautiful thing. I feel like it was a blessing with all the things that are on social media and all the things that are vying for our attention that are not positive. Like I tell my husband, breaking news is designed to break you. Like breaking news is just designed to break you. But to have stumbled upon your profile and your words and just the purity and the honesty and the truth, even it doesn't matter whether it's a good feeling or a bad feeling, it's just honest. To see something that honest, I'm sure that it just gives other people permission to just be honest too. And so I already knew that I liked you a lot just from that. But I feel like after having an opportunity to talk with you, I have such a deep, profound respect for your journey, for what's behind it, for the truth, for the courage even when nobody's looking. That part, the courage when nobody's looking, and the integrity that you're holding with your own health and your own wellness. I so applaud it. And I sensed it, I felt it, and now to be able to share it with my listeners, I just feel so very, very blessed. So very blessed. So as we bring this to a close, I want you to tell our listeners what you want their takeaway to be, and also how to connect with you.
Okay. Well, they can connect with me at the Growth Project .site or at the Growth Project on Instagram. What the takeaway would be is to believe in yourself, to believe that you're worthy, to believe that you're loved, to believe that everything that you believe you desire is possible, but be patient as you walk it out, because it is there. It's so possible, and it's not going to happen overnight. That's why I always push with your self-accountability, self-compassion, and transformation will come.
Mm-hmm. I am so grateful that you shared with us today. And until next time, listeners, I want you to know, no matter what challenges you are facing in your life and relationships right this moment, you are worthy. You are worth it. You are more than enough. Bye now. You have just listened to the Enough Factor podcast with your host, Suzette Vernon. To get notified of new episodes or to dig deeper into today's topic, become a subscriber And while you're at it, tell us how we're doing and what topics you're interested in. We appreciate your feedback and your reviews. Until next time, remember, you are worthy, you are worth it, you are enough.